I've been attacked hundreds of times. I've been jumped by large Muslim gangs. I've had people pull knives on me. I have death threats on a daily basis.
What was that?
I've never been attacked by a white supremacist. My standard experience at Speaker's Corner.
Sure.
You come leave me, I'm gonna cook you like a macarona.
Down.
I might whip you with this.
You're gonna kill me. Let's see it. I'm here. Do it now. Catch that. Do it again.
Free Palestine!
I'm squirrel.
I'm gonna burn you from the bottom to the top.
She's the number one target, maybe Bob the Speaker's Corner number 2, and then Joseph the Zionist would be number 3. It's scriptural. It's not a coincidence that the choice methods of brutality of these jihadi groups is beheading people. It's because it's in the tradition.
The video is insane.
A man's outside, I think, the Turkish embassy, an ex-Muslim, and he burns the Quran. What happens? A man comes along with a knife and stabs him. Do you remember what happens next? After he stabs him, then a delivery driver cycles past a Muslim, sees there's a stabbed man on the floor, but then notices the Quran, so starts kicking the guy on the ground.
That's horrific.
So now, what then happens? It's not just Jews that are threatened by this extremism. It's al-Kufar, the disbelievers. And that's Christians, Jews, atheists, Hindus, anybody that isn't Muslim. So I moved from a developed Western liberal democracy that believes diversity is our strength to a war zone because here I'm safer.
My name is Stefan Tompson. I'm the founder of VisaGrad24, and today I'm speaking with Joseph Cohen, or Joseph Cohen, who I've followed online for his incredibly entertaining debates, arguments, conversations sometimes at Speaker's Corner and online, mostly with Muslims. When I bumped into Joseph earlier today in Jerusalem in the Old City, Joseph told me something incredibly shocking. He said, I'm a British refugee living in Israel. Joseph, good to have you, man.
It's great to be here. It's great to have you here
I appreciate it.
in a place where we're not going to be harassed for the fact that I'm a Jew. So yeah, it sounds sensationalist. It sounds wild to say that I'm a refugee, a Jewish refugee from the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is the champion of diversity. But there is now institutionalized anti-Semitism at such a level that Jews simply aren't safe. I've been an activist now for over a decade.
So explain to me the institutionalization of anti-Semitism in British. Are you talking about British society? Are you talking about
I'm talking
the
about
institutions?
The institutions, the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the government. So we'll start macro, we'll start big. Every week you have hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people protesting.
Sure.
They're marching through the streets screaming, globalize the Intifada. And what that means is globalize the kind of resistance that you see here, which is violence against Jews. And that manifests. There was a horrific terror attack at a Manchester synagogue just a few weeks ago. Jews were killed because they were Jews on their holiest day in their place of worship. And when those tens of thousands of people march through the street screaming, globalize the Intifada, how does the government respond? Well, the Home Secretary's there. And she's participating. She's not in the opposition. She's with them as they're chanting victory to the Intifada, globalize the Intifada. And what happens if a Jew turns up? Well, I can tell you, I turned up to many of those protests. I would go and I would film. Now, I'm not doing anything provocative. I haven't got an Israeli flag. I haven't got a placard. I've got a yarmulke, a kippah, a skull cap, a Jewish hat. What happens every time? The police approach me and say, I'm sorry, sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Why? Your presence here as a Jew is antagonizing. It's provocative. Why would my presence as a Jew provoke anyone? Who gets provoked by Jews? Anti-Semites. And so here you have the police telling Jews that their presence on the streets is offensive to people. And that might sound, that's not so bad, so they moved you from a protest. Well, what happens when we're attacked? Well, my local kosher supermarket, there was an incident where a Muslim walks in and he looks at the shoppers and starts acting a little shifty and asking them, are you Jewish? What do you think of Israel? It's a kosher supermarket. What do you think? Yes, they're Jewish, and it's highly likely they support Israel. Within seconds, he pulls out a huge blade, and this is all on camera. You can go on YouTube and watch footage of this man pull out a blade and starts trying to stab the shoppers. A heroic Orthodox Jew pushes them away with a shopping cart, and they're able to prevent them from stabbing anyone until the police arrive. He's then arrested. Thank God. Does he go to jail? No. The police let him go. He's out on the streets, goes to court, no jail time. So we're at a place where Jews aren't welcome on the streets. If anti-Semites come into our places of, well, in this case it wasn't worship, it was a grocery shop, but they come to our neighborhoods and they try to murder us, nothing happens. And there are so many instances, which I can show you, where Jews have been attacked and the perpetrators have not been jailed. Now, try tweeting that someone is a he, if you believe they're a she, and you'll have them banging on your door and throwing you in jail, and you will face a lengthy prison sentence for misgendering someone, but pull a massive knife on a Jew and try to kill Jews, no jail time. So that's what I mean by institutional anti-Semitism. From the government to the Crown Prosecution Service, who don't put them in jail, to the police, who don't protect Jews on the street, they protect the anti-Semites. So I believe anti-Semitism is institutionalized, and I don't see any change in that space. And it's one of the reasons I've motivated. There's many personal incidents I've been through with the activism.
So your activism is really interesting because a lot of it is, well, on one hand, Speaker's Corner, which is a famed British institution. It's a place that numerous luminaries have spoken at. I mean, some great figures of English history have obviously spoken there. It's attracted throughout the 20th century some great international speakers as well. Now it's become a famous place for YouTube debates and fights and occasional outbursts of violence. And then you have obviously the activism you do online, which is these conversations, these really fascinating conversations in which you quote Quran verses to Muslims. And the reason it's interesting is because there is a strain of I'd almost say sort of Islamophobes really sort of bashing all of Islam, right? And tainting it all with the same brush. The reason I found the conversations that you've had so fascinating is because so much of it is a conversation in which you're using arguments presented in the Quran itself. Tell me, to what extent is your decision to flee the UK informed by the demographic shift that has taken place over the last, I want to say, it's really accelerated since 1997 and the open border policies of Tony Blair, and then it's been maintained by the Boris wave. And, to what extent has your departure been informed by that?
Well, I can only speak about the reality today, because who knows what the UK would be like if that hadn't happened.
Sure.
But I've been attacked hundreds of times. I've been jumped by large Muslim gangs. I've had people pull knives on me. I had death threats on a daily basis. I've never been attacked by a white supremacist. Never. The only people who've ever attacked me in person are Muslim, and from other countries, like either the children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, or tourists. Occasionally get jumped by the odd tourist. And it's a very, very serious problem that the British government have failed to get on top of, in that they've imported millions of people. Mm-hmm. And I'd imagine the overwhelming majority of them are just ordinary people that want to go about their business, but a sizable proportion of them hold views that are just incompatible with the West. Mm-hmm. They come from countries that potentially throw gay men off roofs. They come from countries potentially which have ethnically cleansed the Jewish populations from them. There used to be 850,000 Jews in the Arab world. Today, there's more Jews than one synagogue in London. And there's no, I don't know how you vet someone's views, but there's no checking on, is this person's views compatible with ours? There's no attempt to assimilate and integrate these communities. Instead, what we have a balkanized UK now, mm-hmm. where you can go to the Polish area, you can go to the Jewish area, you can go to the Muslim area, you can go to the Pakistani Muslim area, you can go to the Kurdish Muslim area, and all of these communities balkanize them in these little silos, yeah. And it doesn't work. And what happens is, conflicts which aren't even, that have no place in Europe, are suddenly being fought on the streets of Europe. You have Muslim gangs going to Leicester to attack Hindus.
Sure.
You have Jews like myself, many Jews like myself are leaving the UK, who feel we are no longer safe there. And so it's entirely at the moment, like the reality it's on the ground today, it's almost exclusively a Islamist problem. Now, I'm somebody that works extensively with the Muslim community. I don't believe Muslims are my enemy, but there is definitely a serious problem of anti-Semitism within the Muslim world, and that's why I do the work that I do. But the UK, I believe, is a lost cause unless something dramatic happens, and I just don't have any faith in the politicians that Britain has at the moment to ensure the safety of my children. Ultimately, I'm a father. I don't know if you have kids, but my primary concern is, are my children going to be safe? And I've moved to a war zone because I believe they're going to be safer here than in the UK, because here there's a military, there's a police, there's an entire nation that has my children's safety at the forefront of every action they take. That is not the case with the UK. If you can walk into a kosher supermarket and stab Jews or try to stab Jews and not go to jail, that's a problem for my children. If you can drive through my neighborhood and scream on a megaphone that you are going to do the most bestial, savage things to my daughter, to my Jewish daughter, and the police have your license plates, they know the name of every single person in the car, and the Crown Prosecution Service don't prosecute you, my children are not safe there. So I moved from a developed Western liberal democracy that believes diversity is our strength to a war zone, because here I'm safer and I feel safe. I'll give you some like just wild examples of how British society is not the society I grew up in. Here, and I don't know what it's like around the world, but here, 5-year-old children play on the streets and they're completely safe. I have little kids knocking on the door and asking to play with my children without a grown-up. Why? Because they're safe to walk the streets. If I have a delivery from Amazon, it gets delivered to a local shop. There is not a locker with a code that you type in to get your parcel out. There's a shelf and it's got a load of parcels on it, and you go in and you take your parcel. Nobody checks your ID, nothing. But it works entirely on trust. That does not work in the UK. There's no cohesion. There's no society. There's no trust, and there's no security. There's no, particularly if you are a vulnerable minority like the one I belong to.
One of the interesting things is that in a low trust society, is the one you're describing, essentially there's a sort of myth that radical socialists push, that we're all sort of hostages of the billionaire class. The opposite is actually true. Society becomes the hostage of the sort of 10% worst behaved individuals who make it a hell on earth for everyone else to live in. So you can no longer leave your parcel on the door because that person from that lower 10% who's completely asocial will end up stealing or damaging it. So we sort of become, from my experiences in the UK, the decline is systemic in terms of, for example, something as silly or as basic as, not in the case of being a Jewish activist that is recognized by the Jewish in the Muslim community, but of just being a Londoner. You go onto the tube and that experience has become less pleasant. Of the entire carriage is graffitied, or the smell of urine everywhere. The decline is measurable in a lot of ways. Tell me, to what extent do you think your life would have actually been in danger if you had stayed? And to what extent would your life have been in danger because you were a recognizable figure amongst the Muslim community?
Have you ever been to a Jewish school in the UK?
No.
They look like prisons. They look like prisons. They're surrounded with wire and cameras. You have to pass through security to get into them. Have you ever been to synagogue on the Sabbath, on Shabbat in the UK?
I haven't.
You have to pass through security. You have to get past security guards to go to our places of worship. Now, the UK is not America. There's no guns in the UK. But the threat is so serious that if you're an ordinary Jew, you have to have incredible security to keep you safe. Now, I am more recognizable, and as a consequence, I've been in numerous situations where there has been credible threats to my life. But it's not just me. Don't think that this is just a Jewish thing. There's a Turkish preacher who was a Muslim, a murtad. She left Islam and she became a Christian. And she did something which some people found distasteful. She said there were holes in the narrative of the Quran. And so she went to Speaker's Corner and drilled some holes in the Quran. I personally think that's a pretty classless thing to do. If you disagree with the Quran, be beat the Muslims with arguments, don't disrespect their blood, but it's her property, she can do what she wants. She could do the same with the Torah. I'd be offended, but she buys it, she wants to waste the money, c'est la vie. October7th. And what was the reaction? A terrorist bought a gun and went to kill her. Now, if he'd have been successful, he was apprehended by the police and they intervened, and it was one time the police prevented a terror attack, thank God. Had he been successful, I would have been there as well. She's the number one target, maybe Bob the Speaker's Corner number 2, and then Joseph the Zionist would be number 3. That same preacher, the year before, had been stabbed in the face by a terrorist just because they disagree with her views. There was that horrendous incident in the UK where a man's outside, I think, the Turkish embassy, an ex-Muslim, and he burns the Quran. He was actually a follower of mine as well. I've forgotten his name, so it feels quite bad. I realised when I Googled him, he was...
Salwan Mamika?
That was the man who was killed in Sweden. No, it's a different man. He also followed me there, but I didn't really know him. Now, this guy, the Turkish guy, he stands outside, I think it was Turkish.
The embassy.
And outside the embassy.
Outside the embassy.
The Quran. What happens? A man comes along with a knife, a terrorist, and stabs him.
The video is insane.
And what happens next? Do you remember what happens next? After he stabs him, then he's on the ground.
He's on the ground, and they come and arrest him.
No, it's even worse than that. A delivery driver cycles past a Muslim, sees there's a stabbed man on the floor, but then notices the Quran, so starts kicking the guy on the ground.
That's horrific.
So now, what then happens? The police, I want to get this right. The police go after the man who burnt the Quran.
Yes.
Inciting.
That's right, for incitement. And he was recently let off. He was acquitted in court, thank God, and then because it means that there's no blasphemy laws in the UK. But the whole situation was absolutely insane.
The very fact you can get to that point. So it's not just Jews that are threatened by this extremism. It's al-Kufar, the disbelievers. And that's Christians, Jews, atheists, Hindus, anybody that isn't Muslim. Now, this isn't all Muslims, so I'm speaking specifically with a very literal reading of Islam. But it's there, and it's a very present and very real threat in the UK, and the government is completely incapable of handling it. So much so, there's this insane video where there's a guy waving the Al-Qaeda flag, screaming, Allah's curse upon the Jews in Arabic, Allah's curse upon the disbelievers, the Christians, etc., in Arabic. And instead of arresting the guy, the police come to his defense and say that this is just the declaration of faith. There was another video where his Tahrir, I think it was his Tahrir, were outside the Egyptian embassy, and they're screaming, Muslim armies, we need to unite and wage jihad, Muslim armies. The police get involved, and they're like, guys, I don't think you understand Islam. Jihad means struggle. So if you've got a problem, maybe you eat a lot of cakes, your jihad could be to go on a diet. Say, yes, that is what jihad means. It means struggle. So does Mein Kampf means my struggle. And you could describe going on as a diet as your jihad, but you can't describe calling on the Muslim armies to wage jihad against Israel, that the Muslim armies are going on a diet against Israel. Guys, we're going on a hunger strike. No more eating for the Marines, no more eating for the Navy SEALs. So,
Yossi, so I wanted to ask you about some of your experiences on Speaker's Corner. One of them that you brought up specifically before we started talking was about Billy. I want you to tell us about Billy.
So first we have to watch the video about Billy. Now you cannot get a more British name than Billy. Let's meet Billy. This is Billy.
You're going like this to my face. Because you're telling me you're going to dominate me and conquer the world.
Get your finger out of my face, bro. Get your finger out of my face.
What do you mean when you say that Muslims are going to dominate the world? I'm not going to be your dhimmi. I'm not going to be your dhimmi.
And you will give us the jizya.
Because I'm not getting... See, there we go. There's the extremist. There's the extremist. He says
we're going to take our country. You don't belong there.
Stop running away from the
take
subject.
it. That's it.
You literally said you're going to dominate the world.
Yeah, we will. And what? What are you going to do?
Mate, your empires have collapsed. The caliphates are nowhere to be seen. You come here and you say you're going to dominate the world, and we're all going to pay you a jizya. I'm not paying you nothing, mate.
You will.
We'll see if I pay you a jizya.
And then must you say thank you to the British government?
Now, this story has a happy ending because Billy was radicalized And he was in some pretty extreme circles, guys that went off and fought in Syria. And Billy was just an ordinary Englishman.
So Billy was an Englishman who converted to Islam.
Reverted, please.
Reverted,
we were
of
all
course.
born Muslim.
He reverted, sure. But he didn't travel to Syria to fight in the
He
Islamic
didn't
State.
participate in any terrorist activity, but he had friends that did. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying
So
this.
he became a sort of hardcore Muslim, a sort of radical Muslim.
There was a circle of them that had either studied under Anjem Choudhury
Sure.
or they were associated with the students of Anjem Choudhury. And they'd go to Speaker's Corner and they'd unfurl the black standard, and they were extreme and they were talking about global domination. And he was like a lost cause. You look at this English kid who had the world, and he's abandoned, he's given up on all of that and embraced the most extreme, violent ideology you could imagine. And he did tshuva. Sorry, that's a Hebrew word. He repented. He realized that it was a lost cause. He realized that these guys are extremely violent, and he's actually done full circle now and is doing incredible work de-radicalizing others in that space. So there is a path out of this extremism. But what I'll do now is show you some less positive cases.
Sure.
So let's have a look at this guy. So this is my standard experience. I think it's this one here.
Yeah.
It's my standard experience at Speaker's Corner.
You
Sure.
were flicking your lighter before, telling me you were going to burn my beard.
Not now. When we get Palestine, I will do it for you.
Yeah, you won't.
Yeah. No, not now. When we get Palestine, inshallah,
You
in
won't
the
do it
future,
now and you won't do it then.
I'm gonna burn you from the bottom to the top when we get to Palestine. You know why?
You don't need to go to Palestine, you can do it now.
Wait, because you know, when you go to Palestine, you patronize my people, you kick them away from their homes, you made them asylum on all around the world, bro.
So watch this, people, watch
Yeah.
this. There are 2 million Arabs living in Israel as Israeli citizens with
Yeah.
full equality. How many Jews in Libya?
We don't have.
And he has the audacity to talk about kicking people out.
Of course.
He drove the Jews
You're
out of
not
their
allowed in
country.
Libya. You come Libya, I'm gonna cook you like a macarona.
And listen to the fanatics
simple.
laughing.
Wow.
Listen to
Like a
them. This is
macarona.
why we can't live under them. This is
Wow.
And there's a million videos I've got like that where
Sure.
you have people, often it's North Africans, interestingly, you have people with extremist views. They express the most vulgar and violent anti-Semitism, and there's always a crowd around me, and never once has the Muslim crowd reacted negatively to the anti-Semitism. So you've got a guy here who's gleefully recalling how the Jews were ethnically cleansed from Libya.
Sure.
And then says that any Jews come there, he's going to cook them like macaroni after threatening to burn my beard. And there's nothing. And every single incident like that, it becomes very tribal. The tribe sticks together. And if you are outside of the tribe, God help you. And that's why when I've been attacked on multiple occasions at Speaker's Corner, it's never been by one person. There's always multiple. One person will initiate and then more will jump in.
How prevalent do you think these views are amongst Muslims living in the UK specifically and more broadly in the West?
Very. I think anti-Semitism. So there's differing degrees. To the extent where they do something, I think only a minority. Harboring anti-Semitic views, mainstream. That's why I do the work that I do.
It's what Mehdi Hassan called, if I believe I'm recording this correctly, he referred to it about 15 years ago. He said it was the Muslims' dirty little secret in the West was that anti-Semitic views were really quite prevalent.
Yeah, it's scriptural. It's literally scriptural. The Quran describes, not just me, you as well, as a Christian, as the worst of creatures. And Islam's one of these religions, it's like any religion, I believe. You can interpret it and take it to a very good place. So you will have Muslims who do nothing but goodness their entire life. And they genuinely base that on the teachings of their Prophet, on the Seerah, the Sunnah, the Quran. They give charity, they give to the widow, the orphan. And that's how they read the Quran. And it's all in the Quran. And that's perfect. I have no, that's the Muslims whose voices I want to amplify. But you have another Muslim who reads the same book. And he reads that the dhimma need to be subjugated and forced to pay a tax of humiliation.
The jizya.
The jizya, yeah. That there's a verse in the Quran which says, فَإِذَا لَقَيْتُمُوا الَّذِينَ لَكَفَرُوا فَالدَّارُ بَارِقَبِّ, which means when you meet the kuffar, the Christian, the Hindu, the Jew, strike their throat. Now, that can be contextualized to a time of war. But when you look at Daesh and you look at these extremist groups, these are the verses they're using to justify the barbaric acts. It's not a coincidence that one of the choice methods of brutality of these jihadi groups is beheading people. It's because it's in the tradition. And so anti-Semitism, we're here. If you travel over to the Palestinian territories, the areas controlled by the National Authority and that were controlled by Hamas, anti-Semitism is present among strong anti-Semitic views, according to the ADL's annual survey, amongst 97% of the population. And if you go to a more moderate nation, you'll be in the 70s. So if you go somewhere like Bangladesh, maybe it's 75% of the population, according to the ADL, I think, has anti-Semitic views. And that these views are being brought into Western nations. And so anti-Semitism is rife, homophobia is rife, all manner of prejudices against non-Muslims are commonplace. Doesn't mean that they can't be challenged, they can't coexist, but this is why when someone says the things that they're saying to me and you're watching it, nobody's intervening. Nobody's intervening. And when they do intervene, it's usually to attack the Jew.
Let me reverse the question. How many Western Jews do you think are aware of the dangers of the newcomers from majority Muslim countries?
So I'm going to say something, I don't know if what I've said already is politically incorrect, but something very politically incorrect.
Yeah.
So the Jewish communities, like the white English community, like any community,
Sure.
we're diverse. You have far left to far right.
Of course.
And those on the far left will have a very different view of anti-Semitism within the Muslim community to those on the far right.
Yeah.
But if you look at our institutions, the Jewish institutions, which they have no power outside of the Jewish community, but they're representative of our views. They run our organization. They speak for us to wider society. Every single one of those organizations will have a position on Tommy Robinson. They'll know his name. And there will be a huge amount of British Jews that don't think fondly of Tommy Robinson. And if you ask those same Jews to name one Muslim hate preacher in the UK, I think you'd struggle to find one in 1,000 that could. And that's the problem, is that we often focus our energies in the wrong direction. We're told to be mindful and scared of white supremacists. We're told to be wary of the far right. We're told that we should, and I believe we should, ally with our Muslim neighbours because we're living this diverse society where we need to make it work. We're here, we need to make the society fruitful and positive. But I think there is a lack of awareness as to where the threat is truly coming from and how grave a danger a sizable section of the British Muslim community poses to Jews. Now, I'm not saying there's a sizable community that's going to go out and stab a Jew, but they may influence the man who picks up a knife and tries to run Jews over and stabs them. They may be unwilling to report him because he's one of their...
We've seen this most horrifically perhaps with the grooming gang scandal.
Yeah.
I always get a little bit when Western Jews sort of talk about Jews being the first in line. You know, there's a sort of saying that's very common amongst Israelis that, you know, first they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people. And my answer to that, I obviously agree that the Jews are certainly a very big target of the radical Muslim community. There's certainly a huge hatred, but the hatred for non-Muslims, white Christians, we've certainly seen it with the grooming gang scandal, which targeted white working class girls over a period of several decades.
Yeah.
And the real horror, and something that you just said has reminded me of this once more. I mean, I've been bringing this up in many conversations around some of the problems that we have with Islam, is that how can there be a community, a sizable community, across numerous towns and cities of the UK, in which not one mother, sister, daughter reported those Pakistani or British Pakistani rapists that partook in the grooming gang scandals. That is particularly horrific to me, that there would have been numerous women in those Pakistani communities around the United Kingdom that did not report the rapists.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you were sort of saying, Yossi, which is interesting, of sort of, the influence. So tell me, if you were to tell me what the single greatest threat, not specifically to British Jews, but specifically to more broadly to British society, what is that single greatest threat, do you think, to the United Kingdom today?
Civil war.
You think that's a real
I
possibility?
think, how it manifests, who knows? But one thing that I could very easily see happening is when a society balkanizes and begins to vote in blocks, democracy breaks down. And we're beginning to see that most strongly in the last election, where you saw Muslim MPs, and not just Muslim MPs, but MPs elected solely on an anti-Zionist platform.
The Gaza ticket.
Yeah, I know you said
Adnan
not to make it
Hussein.
about Jews, but I can't help it.
Adnan Hussein
Exactly.
being case in point, right?
And and this is a conflict that's thousands of miles away. It's got nothing to do with the UK. Now, in that moment,
And not
this
much
Gaza
to do
war-
with Pakistan.
Yeah, nothing to do with, but to do with Muslims. But it's all to do with the tribalism that we're discussing. Now, the last election, the headline was Gaza. The next election, maybe it will be LGBT, maybe it will be something else. I don't know what, but there's going to be something which is going to
Overshadow
yeah.
the Israel-Hamas war.
and it's going to have a larger voting appeal to a large block of Muslims, and they're going to vote. And when you have a large minority group voting in a block in the UK, ultimately what's going to happen is a block is going to emerge in opposition to that. Now, the English people have never done that. The English people have never voted along ethnic lines because they've been
It's
the
been
majority.
centuries since British sectarianism.
Exactly.
It's been a long time.
Exactly, and that's where it's going to manifest. If you balkanize society, I personally think multiculturalism doesn't work, because you create different communities that are competing for the same resources. And when you look at the level of just the volume is just consistently being turned up and ratcheted up every year with these different, so you'll have the Muslims, the left, the patriots, the right, the conservative, and the volume's getting louder and louder, and it's getting more and more hostile. But these people are living together, and there's now millions of people. There are more Muslims in Israel, in the UK now, well, way more Muslims than Jews, but there's more Muslims in the UK than there's Muslims in Israel. There's more Muslims in the UK, like it's a huge Muslim community now.
6% of the population.
Yeah, according to
at last
statistics.
count. And if you look at the demographic period, of course, that distribution of that 6% is broadly found amongst the 0 to 18.
And that's what we're finding in the census. There's many people outside the census. And so
That's a very good point. Of course, there's many people
if
outside
you're coming
the census.
over on a boat, you're not counted in any census. And so there's a huge community there that aren't going anywhere. Unless the government enforces migration, and you're going to get violent resistance to that. I think there's a very real likelihood that a European nation, maybe the UK, maybe Belgium, maybe France, but there's a very real risk of sectarian violence on the streets. You're already kind of seeing it. You saw it with Muslims and Hindus in Leicester. You saw it with English and Muslims back in the early days of the English Defence League. And it's likely to manifest again. And when it manifests the next time, it will be more violent and larger scale, because the communities are larger. And so it's going to get worse and worse unless there's from my perspective, from my prediction, unless the government intervenes somehow. Because I don't think you can push multiculturalism on a society, particularly when those communities are encouraged almost to dislike each other. If you're white English, you're told to hate yourself. If you're Muslim, you're told that you're being discriminated against, and the society's institution against you. And so, I think it doesn't look well for these nations. I think violence is a probability unless there is a change, and there could be a change. Like a party could swing into office the next election, and change everything. But if the West stays on the trajectory it's currently at, Europe at least, I think we're in for a very bumpy road, and I also don't want to stick around for that. So I moved here.
Do you consider yourself more British or more Israeli?
So I consider myself now more Jewish, but I grew up in a working...
So not Israeli, specifically Jewish?
Israel. It's hard to say I feel Israeli because I don't really speak the language yet. I've been here a year and a half. I'm thinking English. Most of my interactions with people are in English. So, but I consider myself Israeli. I'm an Israeli citizen. But I'm in that situation where I'm between two different identities. But I was raised in a white working class pit village. We were the only Jewish family in it. A pit village is in the north. You'd have a mine. Sure. And the miners would live in the village. It would be paid for by the mine. They had a band. I was in the brass band. I used to play a trumpet for the colliery band. Like, as working class as they get. And I felt nothing. I didn't feel Jewish. I felt British. In my 20s, I became religious. Like, I come from a line of rabbis, but we were raised by communists. Exactly.
It's in the name. The clue's in the name.
But we were raised by communists. So I was raised with religion as the opiate of the masses. Here's another amazing thing. I was raised that anyone who took pride in the flag was a moron. Like, why take pride in a piece of cloth? Like, you can't help where you're born. Take pride in the things that you do. If you build a business, take pride in that. If you get qualified in a career, celebrate that. But don't take pride in a flag. And we used to look at the Americans and laugh at them. They'd have a flag on the lawn, they'd salute, they'd sing the national anthem. And then you come here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the streets are lined with Israeli flags. Every building will have flags on the people's houses. My house now has an Israeli flag on it. Why? Because the flag represents something. You should be proud of the place that you live. And I look at what this nation's built up, Israel, in just over 3/4 of a century. And it's incredible. It's phenomenal what they've built. And it's an incredible sound. This nation was built by the survivors of anti-Semitism, Holocaust, Muslim massacres. And it's incredible. Now, shine the spotlight back on Britain. I was raised to hate my nation. We are imperial colonizers. We plundered the riches from the rest of the world and we put them in our museums and we built a mighty empire on the sweat and blood of others that we exploited. But when you move beyond the propaganda and you look at what Britain really did, Britain altered the course of humanity for the better.
100%.
It's
100%.
It's this tiny little island with a handful of farmers and peasants, but they shaped humanity. They went out to the world and introduced innovation after innovation, built railroads, and their contribution,
legal systems, and philosophical systems, and they spread Christianity,
was phenomenal. And what was I taught in school? That this is a nation of colonizers. There was no celebration of the greatness of what Britain was. And so I grew up believing, to answer your question, that I was 100% British. But the Britain that I believed I belonged to doesn't exist anymore.
Do you not feel British enough to stay in the UK and fight for the UK and fight for the UK that you would have liked to live in?
So the Jewish people, the Jewish experience in the West is very mixed. So my ancestors fled persecution in Poland to come to Britain, and they were given refuge. And my experience, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for British Jews here. My experience was, certainly as an adult, as I became aware of my history and the history of Britain, and I'm actually mixed ancestry. I've got English, Irish and Jewish. Okay. Mixed race. The Jews are a race. We were given refuge and we landed in the UK. And there's this incredible sense of gratitude.
Yes.
That we were given a place of refuge. And we were welcomed into this incredible society where we were able to materially thrive. My father built a business, I was educated, I bought a house, I did very good in the UK materially. And as a consequence, if you go to any synagogue on Saturday, on Shabbat, almost every synagogue in the UK will say a prayer of thanks to the royal family and to the government. If you go to any Jewish rally, be it a Jewish rally against anti-Semitism, a Jewish rally in support of Israel, you'll see as many British Union Jacks as you'll see Israeli flags. So there's an incredible sense of gratitude, but there's an awareness that
you're guests.
That you're a guest. Yeah.
Really?
That for me, I can't speak for
I
Jews.
understand that.
A lot of Jews will say, no, I'm as English as the next Englishman. Me personally, I felt that this was a nation that gave my family a place of sanctuary, a place of refuge.
It's amusing you say this because I feel very much the same way. As a Pole whose family was given refuge, they weren't allowed to return to Poland after World War II. They stayed in the West. We were guests in the UK. I feel immense gratitude to the United Kingdom, but I certainly don't feel British. Yeah. Which is it's an interesting thing because I sort of guess both of us in many ways are kind of the living embodiment of the argument against multiculturalism, in the sense of here we were, both of us very assimilated in British society, and yet both of us not fully part of it because you chose to move to Israel, return to Israel in the Aliyah sense, and I chose to return, 3 generations later to Poland.
Yeah.
Isn't that quite interesting?
It is fascinating. I think my personal story is there's also the religious and ideological aspect to why I came here. The timing of why I came is very much anti-Semitism. And not just anti-Semitism, actually, just building on the not feeling there. I remember immediately after October the 7th, a couple of days later, I went back to work. And I remember everybody at work just smiling, laughing, and having a joke. And on the inside, I'm broken because my people are overcoming the greatest trauma we suffered since the Holocaust. And for everyone else, it's just Tuesday. And it's like, how can this be? And I said, I'd never felt so alien in my own land, and they did nothing wrong. Like, why should they care?
No, obviously,
when there's a massacre in Central African Republic, am I pulling my hair out? No, it's horrible. I wish it didn't happen, but it doesn't affect me, so I don't think about it. And I'll make jokes with my friends, not about that, but it was, I go about my life. And they did exactly the same. So there was that, okay, maybe I do belong somewhere else because I'm hurting for my people, and maybe these people aren't my people after all because they're not hurting, they're not. And then there's also the religious aspect. I'm a religious Jew. I'm a minority, most Jews aren't religious. I'm a religious Jew, and religiously I believe Jews live in this land. So had anti-Semitism not got to what it got to in the UK, had the Gaza war not made me feel like an alien in my place of birth, maybe I would have made Aliyah years and years and years later, or maybe not at all. But all of these things came together, and for me, it was time to go. The violence, the anti-Semitism, yeah.
Are you raising your children in a British sense in any way, shape, or form, or are you turning them into complete and? Are they going to
my
be
children?
Israeli?
My children will say please and thank you, and they will learn how to queue.
For context, for the people who are watching this, I think Yossi is making a comment about manners in Israel.
Yeah, Israelis are the warmest people you will ever meet. Like, the people that are walking past me, I know would take a bullet for me if anything happened, but they'll never say please or thank you.
Correct.
And if I get in the way of them as they're trying to board a bus, they will shoulder barge me out of the way. It's an interesting place.
Yossi, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was
my
great.
pleasure. Great
Thank you.
connecting.